This entitled mother is about to con her sister out of hours of her time. She has asked her to babysit but has no intention of returning on time. But she's not going to let her drunken sister get away with it. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, on with the revamped show. This happened when my nephew was just a year old, so like 7 years ago. My sister, EM, asked me to babysit my nephew for her and BIL for a few hours so they could go to the Mardi Gras parades together. I said I was making plans that night, so I couldn't, but she begged me to help her because they'd not had a date night since nephew was born and they needed some time alone together as a couple. I begrudgingly said I would, but only if they paid me $15 per hour because watching a baby is hard and I turned down plans for this. Well, me, sis and brother-in-law all agreed on that, so I was set to come over that Saturday night. I showed up at 5 PM. Parades were to start at 6 PM I think, and they both said they would be back no later than 10 PM, so $75. I was allowed to watch TV, use their Wi-Fi, and eat or drink whatever is in the fridge, but sis said I better not go nuts on their food. Wonderful jab at my weight, thanks sis. I flipped her off, then brother-in-law comes in with nephew and hands him off to me. I make sure to reiterate that they are both coming back at 10 and ask for payment up front, but sis says they're going to have to stop at an ATM on the way back. They don't have any cash on them. I'm annoyed but say alright. I ask if they're going to be drinking and how they'll get back if they are, and also drive me home cause our mum drove me to their place, so I was stuck. And sis says, of course we're not, but I don't believe her. She can't have fun without a beer. But while she's getting her jacket, brother-in-law says he's not drinking anything, but she probably will, so he'll be the designated driver. At least there's that. I bid them goodbye and settle in with my nephew. I play with him for hours, put on his favorite cartoons, and feed him dinner / change his diaper, etc. All the usual stuff. I'm not a stranger to watching kids for relatives, so this isn't new for me, but nephew is hard to get to sleep. He wants his mum and dad. This had been the first time he'd gone to sleep without them there, and cried for almost an hour, no matter the different ways I tried to soothe him, before eventually wearing himself out and falling asleep at almost 9 PM. I was tired, but glad I was almost done for the night. 10 PM rolled around, nothing. Then it got to be 10:30, so I called sis to see what the holdup was. She answered and I could tell she'd been drinking. She was giggly, and after I asked where they were, she said they were looking for her shoe, and she said something about they ran into our cousin, another entitled person, great, and they were totally heading back as soon as possible. I said to hurry up, and she said something I literally couldn't understand before she hung up on me. 11 PM rolled around and still nothing, so I called her back. It rang and rang before going to voicemail. She ended the call instead of answering. I try again and it rings even less this time before going to voicemail. She turned her phone off or it died. I call her again and same result. I can't call brother-in-law because I don't have his number, never had to call him before. I consider calling our mum to see if she can get in touch with sis, but it's past 11 PM at this point, so I know she's asleep by now, so I don't bother. I don't want to wake her up unless there's an actual emergency. Plus nephew woke up at some point around then, so I had to pause trying to contact my sis and focus on getting him calmed down and sleeping again. Took a while, but he fell right asleep after I started scratching his back, softly. A legit trick to get kids to sleep, knocks them right out. So then I wait. They finally roll up at nearly 1:30 AM. I'm ticked at this point and tired. Just want to get paid and crawl into bed. I'd been up since 8 AM, so I was tired. Brother-in-law and sis stumble in. She's barefoot with her shoes in one hand and laughing loudly. I come ask them what took so long, and sis starts going on about how great a time they had, how they hung out with cousin, and she pulled these stupid unopened tubes of Mardi Gras streamers out of her purse, opens them and flings them everywhere, loudly talking about the stuff they caught while trying to shush her. Nephew is asleep and I don't want him waking up again. She starts handing me all this crap from her purse that she said she got just for me, so don't be mad at me, okay? Like that junk would make her leaving me stranded at her place for almost twice as long as she'd promised would make everything better. The stuff was just a bunch of smushed moon pies, tons of bread, plastic cups, and other junk. I said thanks, but told them I wanted to go home. Sis waved me off and said to brother-in-law to take me home, before going and flopping down onto the couch to sleep, I guess. I get my stuff and brother-in-law takes me home, and I remind him to stop at an ATM, and he sorta sighs. Like, I get he was probably tired from dealing with my drunk sister for hours, but I wasn't getting screwed out of my payment. He stops at a drive-through ATM, looks at me and says, "Alright, $75, right?" Not proud of this, but I actually let out a loud haha and said no. It would have been $75 if they'd come home at 10, like they'd said, but they showed up at almost 2 AM, 3 hours late. So they owed me $125. He didn't look too happy, but he got the money out and gave me my pay before silently driving me home. I went to bed exhausted, but $125 richer. Next day around noon, sis called me furious I'd conned brother-in-law out of so much extra money when we'd all agreed on them paying me $75. I asked if she was still drunk because what we'd all agreed on was that I'd be paid $15 per hour, and they left me with their son for 8 hours. I also mentioned how she'd said they wouldn't be drinking, but she came home smashed. She replied that she'd been drinking. Of course she was going to drink. It was Mardi Gras. I said I got paid for the work I did, but she kept arguing that I didn't really work for it because nephew was asleep most of the time I was there. I said it didn't matter. I was still sitting for her, and how you'd be expected to pay a security guard to sit and do nothing if even they were calm while he was on the clock. She yelled that wasn't the same thing, and we argued back and forth with her saying I should have done it for free, he's family. You should want to be around him. I finally got fed up and said that next time she could hire other sitter because I wouldn't do it, or try to get other family members to watch nephew for free, fat chance, before hanging up. I didn't want to argue with a potentially hungover nuisance. She tried running to our mum about this, but mum told her she needed to not hire babysitters if she couldn't afford to pay them. Sis called me the next day and said she'd told all her friends that I was crappy and took advantage of them being late by charging them a ton more, and that none of them would hire me to babysit after this. I didn't really care because her friends are losers that I have no relationship with, plus I only babysat for one a handful of times, and her kids are loud as heck to boot, so no real loss there. I didn't babysit after that at her place ever again. I would only babysit if I was paid upfront and would take nephew and niece later out somewhere, then drop him or them off with her when the allotted time was over so she couldn't leave him or them with me for longer. I'm so glad she ended up getting paid, and the only bad thing that really happened was she wasted more time than she wanted, and the sister was a bit mad with her afterwards. If she got cheated out of the money, that would have just made me so mad. It doesn't matter if the kid is sleeping the whole time. She could have been somewhere else doing something else. She could have made other plans. You are paying for her time. Plus, you just don't know what the kid's gonna get up to, and that's the whole point of the babysitter, for them to take responsibility while you're away. And yes, you have to pay for that. A little over 2 years ago, I won a raffle at my job for an all-expense-paid family vacation. It wasn't some super fancy prize to Disneyland or anything crazy like that. It was just a nice 3-day stay at this little beach house inn place. It was for 4 people, and I asked around and found out the package deal cost just under $400. Pricey for me, but not so much for the older or more experienced co-workers I have. I, of course, asked my boyfriend at the time to go, but he couldn't take off school. I'd wanted to take my single friends and make it a girls trip type deal, but they either couldn't because of work or other IRL responsibilities at the time, which I was sad about but understood. Since the plan was a bust, I decided to see if my sister and her 2 little kids wanted to come. I figured they'd enjoy it, and so would my sister, and I didn't want to waste the tickets. Well, I went down to visit my family that weekend, intent on asking sis if they wanted to come, but the longer I was there, the more I hated the idea. By the time I was packing up to go home, I knew I wasn't inviting them. I love my niece and nephew, but they were super bratty back then. They're doing better these days, because my sister never disciplines them, ever. I love them, but she lets them get into everything, and never watches them unless someone, either me or our mom, yells at her to get off her butt and watch them. Visiting is always a chore, before because I end up watching them to give our mum a break. It's pathetic. And like every time I visit, my sis dumped them on me the entire time, like usual. And by that point, I knew if they came, it would turn into me babysitting them while she had a vacation. So I didn't mention the trip or vacation and just said goodbye before leaving. Next day, I called my good friend Megan, cause she has 2 kids, other than Sis's kids and very well behaved, and she's a single working mum who I figured could use the vacay. I asked if she would be free for XYZ days, and she was like, yeah, so I offered to invite her along with me on the vacation, if she would pay for the gas to get us all to and from there, while I would pay for the food for us to and from there, and she happily agreed. We went and had a blast. I got a pretty good tan, we ate lots of buffet food, swam at the beach, and did fun, family, kid-friendly type activities all weekend before coming back. Her kids are super sweet, and it didn't feel like I was babysitting at all, even when I was helping Megan with them. After I got home, I posted some pics I took. Nothing in your face, just a couple cute ones of me, us on the beach. And before lunch even rolled around on my first day back at work, Sis was blowing up my phone. I knew ignoring her calls would just prolong the inevitable, so I answered. I barely got past my hey before she was asking me how the heck I could afford a vacation. I told her it was a raffle prize. She asked who won, me or my friend, and I said me. I don't enjoy lying, it stresses me out. She proceeded to flip her crap, demanding to know why I hadn't invited her. I was honest and said because I didn't want to end up babysit her kids for my entire vacation. She got mad and called me a jerk, then said I knew she needed a vacation, and then hung up on me before I could reply. I just sighed and continued working. Later, while I was leaving work, our mum called me asking why I'd promised niece and nephew I'd take them on vacation. I said I never told them I would. I hadn't even spoken to them since the last time I visited. Turns out Sis told them we were all supposed to go on a beach vacation together, but I ruined it, and now they didn't get to go. So niece and nephew sobbed all day. It took our mum ages to get them to stop crying long enough to explain what was wrong. I told mum my side, and she said I was mean to not invite Sis, niece and nephew, but she dropped it after I told her I didn't invite them because I didn't feel like babysitting my whole vacation. Mum also tore into Sis for lying to her, and also hurting her kids' feelings like that, getting their hopes up about a vacation, and then dashing them by saying I ruined it and they couldn't go. I wasn't there, but mum and Sis threw a huge fit and basically trash talked me all afternoon. The only thing I really felt bad about was my sister getting niece and nephew's hopes up like that. That's the exact reason I'd never said anything to them. But to cheer them up, I took them the next weekend to a kid's play place. They're always on their best behavior with me, cause they know I don't play like their mum, and I will turn my car around and take them home if they're bratty when they're with me. So they got to eat pizza, play games, climb this huge indoor jungle gym thing, and even ride a couple kiddie rides. I also sat down with them while they ate and explained that the trip I went on was for me and my friend, and they wouldn't have liked it because it got so hot and sweaty. They handled it very well, no tears or anything. I don't really understand this concept of feeling entitled to a vacation when somebody else has won it. This has actually happened to me before where a relative won a vacation overseas and they could have taken me, but I didn't expect them to. They ended up taking friends and I realized, you know what, if that's who they want to take, that's totally fine. If they end up going with somebody that they don't really want to go with, then they're not going to have a good time, and that was the whole point of them winning the vacation. In this situation, the entitled mother basically has caused this to happen to herself. If she actually showed some discipline towards her kids and had them well behaved, I'm sure the sister would have loved to have taken them. How you relate to people on a day-to-day basis and how they feel about you affects long-term decisions. Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.